The Golden State Warriors have a depth problem heading into the 2026-27 NBA season, and everyone inside the organization knows it. The roster is aging, the injury history is long, and the financial flexibility is limited. With so many question marks still hanging over the offseason, from free agency targets to roster construction, the team desperately needs reliable contributors willing to earn their minutes. That is exactly the kind of opportunity that second-year guard LJ Cryer appears ready to seize, and he is doing it in the most convincing way possible by making it impossible to ignore him. Hey, what's up everyone? Before we jump into everything today, that like button right there is what decides if this video hits hundreds or thousands of people. 1 second is all it takes, but the impact on this channel is massive. Go ahead and hit that like button right now. Seriously, it's the simplest thing you can do, and honestly, the best way to back this content up because every single like pushes this further. So hit it now. Cryer has been one of the brightest stories of the 2026 NBA Summer League, putting together performances that have turned heads far beyond the Warriors' front office. Through the California Classic and into the Las Vegas portion of the event, the 23-year-old guard has been shooting the ball with a confidence and efficiency that few expected from someone entering just his second professional season. In his standout performance against the Dallas Mavericks, Cryer delivered a line that belonged in a highlight package rather than a summer showcase. He finished with 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists across nearly 27 minutes of action. He connected on 5 of his 8 attempts from beyond the arc, shooting 62.5% from three-point range in that game alone. But what made the performance truly noteworthy was not just the volume of three-point makes. Cryer also demonstrated a mid-range game that was largely absent from his rookie campaign, suggesting he has spent the offseason expanding his offensive toolkit rather than simply polishing his existing strengths. His overall three-point percentage through the California Classic portion of Summer League sat at 41.7%, a number that would be respectable for any NBA rotation player, let alone a young guard still fighting for a guaranteed roster spot. For the Warriors, who ranked among the league's most desperate teams for additional shooting and perimeter creation heading into next season. Those numbers carry real weight. Last season, Cryer appeared in 18 games for Golden State after breaking into the rotation late in the year. He averaged 8.2 points per game and shot 39.4% from three-point range, all while battling through an ankle injury that limited his mobility and effectiveness at various points. Even hampered, he showed enough to earn respect from his teammates and coaching staff. Now, healthy and playing with obvious intention, he looks like a different player. At 6'1", questions about Cryer's ability to guard NBA-caliber opponents on the perimeter will never fully disappear. Size is a real limitation at the guard position in today's league, where mismatches are exploited ruthlessly. However, those who have watched him closely note that he competes with genuine effort on defense and never takes possessions off. That kind of energy is exactly what head coach Steve Kerr values from players further down the rotation, and it has helped other undersized guards carve out meaningful careers in Golden State's system. The Warriors' backcourt heading into 2026-27 is functional but not deep. Stephen Curry remains the anchor, but the supporting cast at guard needs reinforcements. DeAnthony Melton provides another option at point guard, while Brandon Podziemski and Will Richard compete for minutes on the wing. The team is also reportedly working on a potential reunion with veteran Payton II, a move that would add defensive reliability, but not necessarily more perimeter shooting. That is exactly the gap Cryer could fill. What makes Cryer's Summer League run particularly meaningful is the timing. The Warriors still have roster decisions to make and limited cap space to make them with. A young, cost-controlled player on a two-way contract who can legitimately contribute in real NBA minutes is an enormous asset under those conditions. The front office would be leaving money on the table, figuratively speaking, if they failed to maximize what Cryer can offer. Kerr has historically been cautious about handing extended minutes to young players, preferring veterans who know the system and can execute without mistakes. That philosophy has sometimes frustrated fans eager to see younger talent develop, but Cryer's performances are beginning to make that debate feel less relevant. When a player shoots this well and plays this hard, the argument for keeping him on the bench becomes harder to sustain with each passing game. The Summer League is still a limited sample against limited competition, and the real test will come when regular season games begin and the defensive assignments get more demanding. But the foundation Cryer is building right now is hard to dismiss. He is showing the Warriors exactly what they need to see, and he is doing it at exactly the right time. If he carries this form into training camp and the preseason, Golden State will have no reasonable choice but to clear a real rotation spot and hand it over. For weeks, the basketball world has debated whether LeBron James joining the Golden State Warriors makes any real sense. Critics point to the team's recent struggles, their inability to make the playoffs outright last season, and their status as a franchise that has spent the past 3 years stuck in the play-in tournament. On paper, the Warriors do not look like a destination for a superstar chasing one final championship run. But LeBron's agent, Rich Paul, offered a counter-argument this week that cut straight to the heart of why this conversation refuses to go away. Speaking on the podcast Game Over, alongside host Max Kellerman, Paul was unambiguous about what a LeBron James, Stephen Curry pairing would mean for the rest of the Western Conference. He did not dance around the question or offer diplomatic non-answers. Instead, he said what many fans have been thinking, but few inside the business have been willing to say out loud. If we're just talking strictly basketball, you don't want to play them, Paul said. You definitely don't want to play them in a playoff series healthy. You talk about just basketball brilliance of mind and experience and production. Those words carry significance beyond a simple promotional quote from an agent working on behalf of his client. Paul is making a strategic argument about roster construction and playoff dynamics. He is suggesting that the Warriors, despite their regular season limitations, would become a genuinely dangerous playoff opponent the moment LeBron steps into a Golden State uniform. The combination of Curry's shooting and floor spacing ability with James' playmaking, physicality, and championship experience would create a matchup problem that no Western Conference team would be eager to solve. Kellerman pushed back during the conversation, raising the issue of health, a legitimate concern for any team trying to contend with players in their late 30s and early 40s. He pointed to Kristaps Porzingis as an example of a talented player who has historically struggled to stay on the floor when the stakes are highest. It is a fair point, and no reasonable observer would dismiss the durability questions surrounding a squad that also includes veterans like Draymond Green and Al Horford alongside the aging stars at the top. But Paul's broader argument holds up even when you set the roster concerns aside. By the time next season's playoffs arrive, LeBron James will be 42 years old and Stephen Curry will be 39. Those are extraordinary ages for professional basketball players, and yet the resume attached to those two names is unlike anything the sport has produced in the modern era. James is a 4-time NBA champion and 4-time Finals MVP, widely considered among the greatest to ever play the game. Curry is a 4-time champion himself, a 2-time scoring champion, and the player most responsible for revolutionizing how the sport values and utilizes three-point shooting. Together, they have defined two of the most dominant dynasties in the past 2 decades. They also faced each other in 4 consecutive NBA Finals from 2015 to 2018, creating a rivalry that became the centerpiece of that era of basketball. For many fans, particularly in Brazil, where both players carry enormous star power, the idea of seeing them share a locker room rather than competing on opposite sidelines feels almost too good to be true. From a basketball standpoint, Paul's argument has real merit. A healthy Curry-James combination paired with even modest supporting pieces would demand serious defensive attention from any playoff opponent. Teams would be forced into impossible decisions. Shade coverage toward Curry's shooting and leave James with open driving lanes, or help off Curry to slow James and surrender the kind of wide, open corner threes that have been the currency of Warriors basketball for over a decade. The Warriors, of course, are not the only franchise in pursuit of LeBron James this summer. Multiple teams across the league are engaged in the sweepstakes, and James has given no public indication of where he plans to sign. Golden State's pitch likely centers on Curry, the chance to play in one of the NBA's most celebrated offensive systems, and the opportunity to close out a legendary career in a city that knows how to celebrate champions. Whether that pitch ultimately wins out remains an open question. But Rich Paul's willingness to say publicly that nobody would want to face this team in a playoff series is not just praise for his own client. It is a direct message to the league that the Warriors are a more serious destination than their recent record suggests. Paul also hinted that a LeBron signing alone would not be enough to push Golden State into true contention. Additional moves would be needed to give the team a legitimate path through the Western Conference bracket. James is a difference maker at any age, but surrounding him and Curry with the right pieces would be essential to turning playoff competitiveness into championship possibility. What Rich Paul made clear this week is that the dream scenario, the one Warriors fans have been discussing all summer, is still very much alive, and if it comes to fruition, the rest of the NBA had better prepare accordingly. The Golden State Warriors may be closing in on one of their most straightforward offseason decisions, and it involves a familiar face. According to a report from ESPN's Anthony Slater, free agent guard Gary Payton II and the Warriors have mutual interest in bringing him back for the 2026-27 season. The expectation is that Payton would sign another one-year veteran minimum deal, carrying a cap hit of approximately $2.4 million, a modest price for a player who quietly delivered one of his best professional seasons in 2025-26. Payton, now 33 years old, is entering the final stretch of a career that has seen him evolve from a journeyman who couldn't hold down a roster spot into a respected defensive specialist with 2 championship rings. His current stint with Golden State is already his 6th overall season with the franchise, which is remarkable for a player who wasn't considered a long-term option when he first arrived. A new deal would make it 7, and it would do so on terms that work for both sides. The numbers from last season support the decision to bring him back. Payton appeared in a career-high 73 games, averaging 7.5 points per game while shooting 58.3% from the field. Those efficiency numbers are exceptional for a guard and reflect the intelligent, disciplined offensive role Payton has carved out for himself in Steve Kerr's system. He doesn't force shots. He doesn't demand touches. He takes what the defense gives him, finishes cleanly around the rim, and moves the ball with purpose. What Payton provides on the defensive end, however, remains his most valuable contribution. He is one of the most disruptive on-ball defenders in the league when healthy, capable of making life miserable for opposing guards with his quick hands, active feet, and non-stop motor. That defensive pressure changes how teams game plan against Golden State, and it creates chaos that benefits every player on the court around him. At 6'2", Payton is listed as a shooting guard, though his actual game doesn't map neatly onto traditional position labels. He functions more like a utility defender and energy contributor than a conventional scorer. Offensively, he is often deployed as a screener in pick-and-roll actions or stationed in the dunker spot where Curry's gravity opens up easy finishes. He rarely operates as a playmaker or isolation threat, but he doesn't need to. His role is defined, and he executes it at a high level game after game. If the Warriors finalize a deal with Payton and also secure Draymond Green's expected return, their roster would begin to take clearer shape heading into camp. A projected depth chart would place Stephen Curry and DeAnthony Melton at point guard, with Brandon Podziemski, Will Richard, and Payton handling shooting guard duties. The front court would feature Yaxel Lendeborg and Malavi Leons at power forward, while Kristaps Porzingis, Al Horford, and Charles Bassey handle center responsibilities. Jimmy Butler and Moses Moody remain on the books but are recovering from significant injuries, leaving their availability for the start of the season uncertain. With Payton and Green signed, the Warriors would carry 13 players on standard contracts and 2-on-2-way deals, leaving room for 1 or 2 additional standard signings and 1 more 2-way slot. The team will need to use those spots wisely, targeting the specific positional needs that remain unaddressed, most notably a traditional small forward who can contribute in the front court rotation. Not everyone agrees that re-signing Payton is the right call. Some analysts argue that the Warriors would be better served using that roster spot to hunt for a younger player, someone who fits the profile Payton once filled when Golden State first signed him before the 2021-22 championship season. At that time, Payton was a 28-year-old journeyman who had never played more than 29 games in a single NBA season. The Warriors identified something in him that the rest of the league had missed and built it into a defining role. Finding the next version of that player is an appealing idea, but the reality is that veteran minimum contracts rarely produce the kind of value Payton delivers. Proven contributors who fit seamlessly into an established system and require no development time are exactly what a team with championship ambitions needs when it is trying to compete immediately. The Warriors don't have the luxury of patience on the margins of their roster. A reliable Payton returning for another season may be the more pragmatic path forward, even as the front office keeps an eye on what else the free agent market might offer at a similar price point. There is also something to be said for continuity. The Warriors system, under Kerr, thrives when players understand their roles and trust the structure around them. Payton has spent years internalizing that system, and his presence gives younger players a veteran model to follow on both ends of the floor. Chemistry and trust are not measurable on a stat sheet, but they matter enormously across an 82-game season and into the playoffs. The coming days will tell whether a deal gets done. Both sides appear willing. The financial terms are simple, and the basketball logic is sound. A Gary Payton-Teller reunion would not make headlines the way a LeBron James signing would, but it would quietly make the Warriors a more reliable and defensively coherent team entering one of the most consequential seasons in recent franchise history.